Hi, I'm Chi Kwan Shea, Associate Professor in the Occupational Therapy Program at Sammy Mary University in Oakland, California, in the USA. And today, my lecture's title is Preparing Adolescents for the Healthy Transition to Adulthood. In this lecture, I will define adolescence, review adolescent development, discuss a few common psychosocial challenges faced by them, and summarize a few key points, as well as discuss the role of a healthcare provider working with adolescents. According to UNICEF, adolescence is one's life's fascinating and perhaps most complex stages. Adolescence is also an age of opportunities. And here I'm going to talk about the importance of maintaining health during this important stage in preparing adolescents transitioning to healthy adults. So, who are the adolescents? Probably many of you have seen this popular 70s movie musical about adolescents' happy moments as well as struggles. So let me start by using these characters of this movie to highlight some of the known characteristics of adolescence. Now, the actors were not adolescent when this movie was made, but they played the adolescent roles. So what are some of the common perceived characteristics of adolescence? They are the personas, or the outward image. The good and the bad. In a cohort, there is a role for everyone. And there's the leader, and there are the followers. Within a social environment, there's also personal status. There's the geek, and there's the dog. For every adolescent, there's an inner drive and desire to be someone, the wannabes. The social cohort that you see in these two groups are also very important during this stage of life. Having an identity and a sense of belonging just as important, as you can remember the pink ladies and the T-birds. So ultimately, adolescents often possess the hopes and the fears, like the losses, the friendship, sense of belonging they want. They're afraid not to be noticed. They're the ones fame, afraid of rejection, thinking about college, wanting to be in the spotlight. How about loyalty? And afraid of betrayal, and crave for love, and afraid of bullying, and ultimately wanting to reach adulthood. That's what we will further explore. Adolescence is no longer a child, but definitely not quite an adult. Therefore, adolescence is a long transitional phase from leaving childhood heading on to adulthood. Let me first ask you a few questions about your adolescence. I will give you a few seconds to think about it, and perhaps you want to write down a few words and respond to each question. First, what was the time period, like from what age to what age, when you were an adolescent? Now, perhaps you're still an adolescent at this point. The second question is, what developmental milestone do you remember that you achieved during this time? The third one is, what are some of the strengths and challenges that you experienced during this time period? Think about that? Okay, let's move on. The adolescent in Greece were the 70s youth. So what about the adolescent of our time now? UNICEF defined adolescent in 3 stages: early, middle, and late. So the age span is roughly across 10 to 19 years old. There are about 18 billion adolescents in the world, over 40 million in the USA, and about 860,000 in Hong Kong. Although not a majority, this age group is quite substantial. However, they often may be overlooked or underestimated. Understanding typical adolescent development is very important in order to address the health issues. Physical development is often most obvious and receives the most attention. Visibly, a child grows into a teenager. The physical changes of weight, height, shape, and strength are very apparent. Some of these less obvious physical changes are the hormonal changes, which relates to puberty and sexuality. All these physical changes directly affect the psychosocial health of adolescents. Additionally, early or late maturation also has found to be negatively impact of an adolescent's mental health. Now, we're going to spend a little time about cognitive development. Piaget's cognitive developmental theory described that adolescence signifies a person emerging to a final phase of cognitive development or formal operation. When the adolescent independent thoughts and decision-making ability, independent from his and her parents. At this time, the teen is also developing moral and social value that he or she exercises every day. Moreover, it was once thought that the brain is reaching full maturation at this stage. So it is true that the brain is fully developed at this age. Now, this cartoon may be humorously describing a teenager's brain, but notion of the brain maturity had reached full maturity has a little bit different now. Now, let's especially pay attention to two parts of the brain. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that controls our executive function, cognitive behavior, decision-making, and it also moderates behaviors. The limbic system is the middle of the brain, which controls our motivation, learning, memory, and especially the emotion by the amygdala. The pace of development is a different part of the brain varies, and the amygdala develops before the frontal cortex during adolescent years. That means an adolescent would tend to use emotion rather than reasoning to process stimuli. As you see in this graph, the limbic region of the teen's brain is more developed than the prefrontal region, which might increase the teen's risk in decision making. Therefore, adolescents often tend to be more impulsive, more prone to behave emotionally, and more difficulties handling stress and urges. It is important to remember that a major part of adolescence is for the teen to develop the skills and knowledge to assess risk and consequences. So they need the opportunity to encounter risks and problems, but also adult guidance to make sound choices. Furthermore, William Dement, a leading sleep expert, noted that during the time when adolescents need more sleep is when they begin to reduce hours of sleep because they're staying up late for social and academic reasons, but they still had to get up in the morning and go to school. So sleep deprivation further affects a teen's cognitive and reasoning ability. Adolescent psychosocial development is often most challenging. Erik Erikson's psychosocial development theory helped to explain adolescent experiences during this period. Teens represent the fifth of the 8 stages of development he proposed, which is identity versus role confusion. At this stage of development, teen needs to develop a sense of self and personal identity, independence from their parents. This is also the time when the issue of sexual orientation become apparent. Now, with adequate opportunities for exploration, proper support, encouragement, guidance, the teen will emerge as a strong sense of self and clear direction in life. Adolescence also faces many developmental changes and environmental challenges during this stage of their life. Adolescents are powerful, and they possess many strengths. But they also face many challenges. I'm going to discuss some of the challenges and talk about, as a healthcare provider, what we can do to address them. Being a Hong Kong native that has been living in the USA for over 30 years, I would like to share some statistical similarities and differences regarding certain adolescent issues between Hong Kong and the US. Let's first look at family. Family is a very important stabilizing element for adolescents, and it affects the teen's maturity. However, family conflict also become more prevalent during this time. Because of a teen's need to assert autonomy, there might be more bickering and squabbling between teens and the family member, and the family closeness may also decline. The worst scenario would be the teens become detached from the family and feel rejected by the family. There are several factors to consider in ensuring a healthy family. It is really important to recognize the need for the teen to strive for a more equal relationship within the family. It is a process that must take place successfully in order for the youth to gain sufficient confidence in self and can eventually thrive independently from his or her family. Parents' job is to support the youth's socialization to competence. Therefore, the parenting style and sibling relationship may impact the teen's ability to achieve that maturation. Authoritative parenting is considered the most desirable style, in which the parents set clear and reasonable rules for the youth to follow. Now, these rules are flexible and negotiable, so the teens have some say-so in it. Additionally, consequences are also clear and negotiable. In this way, the teen learns to follow and understand the moral of the rules, but also is empowered to assert their own thoughts and an idea and how to exercise their morality. In contrary, authoritarian parents are most likely have rigid rules, and teens do not have the rights to negotiate. Parents who are permissive often do not set limits that the teens have no opportunity to learn consequences. Parents who are uninvolved or indifferent may seem uncaring, cold, and distant from the children with little communication. Sibling also plays an important role. A supportive and caring sibling relationship enhances the quality of family relationship. Teens who perceive that equal treatment from the parents tends to have a more positive sibling relationship. Education and employment were two important occupations to engage an individual to become self-sufficient. Therefore, disengagement from schools and unemployment are challenges faced in adolescents as well. From a world perspective, there is a significant number of school-age adolescents not receiving education and an even alarming number of underage child workers, as well as unemployed eligible youth workers. The dropout rate measured in Hong Kong between 6 and Form 3, which is considered mandatory education. In 2011, it's only 0.31%, which is very low. In contrary to the US, the national dropout rate in 2012 is 7%, substantially higher in Hong Kong. But it is gradually decreasing. It used to be 10% a few years ago. However, there's a racial disparity that doesn't happen in Hong Kong. The dropout rate in the US, Asian is the lowest, and the Black American the highest. Youth poverty is a major issue in Hong Kong. For those who need and are eligible to work, unemployment among youth who are between 15 and 19 is 17.8%, and 20 to 24 is 8.3%. In the US, youth unemployment rate is about 23% between 16 and 19 and 12.5% among the 20 to 24. So what is the significant about school dropout and unemployment? They both might have an immediate and future economic effect on teens. All the economic indicators throughout the world show that more education yields better earning and generally more satisfying life. Therefore, not finishing secondary or high school poses an immediate and long-term problem. Youth unemployment also plays a role in affecting the youth economic and psychosocial health. However, it's really important to look at how to balance youth employment and education. Education is the single most effective means for upward social mobility. Academic success is often a predictor for successful adulthood. Therefore, it is important to prepare adolescents to be academically successful, which needs to begin in childhood. Personal meanings in education often best engage an adolescent in the education process. Employment is often promoted during adolescent years. Now, it is important to understand that adolescents need proper adult guidance in order to better select employments that they can learn and become competent. Simply getting a paid job may not necessarily be beneficial to a teen. It is found that employment can divert the teen's attention from school, or even called criminogenic, meaning that the job itself can lead to criminal activities, especially when the sole objective of the teen to obtain a job is to make money. It is important for carefully balanced job and education during the adolescent years in order to assure success in both. Considering adolescent education and employment, the concept of occupational engagement is important. A teen yields the most benefit from education or work if the education and work activities are structured and require the active participation. The teen is most engaged in activity that the opportunity to learn new skills are obvious. The challenges are just right, and the teen is intrinsically motivated to do these activities. Through this active engagement, the teen will gain the knowledge, the skills, and the confidence needed to move on to pursue higher education and a meaningful career. Juvenile delinquency is a big concern to society. Teens committing unlawful acts may have long-term consequences. The common criminal activity committed by teens are mostly minor, such as shoplifting, petty theft. There is also violence involved, especially gang affiliation. Prostitution and pimping are serious crimes. Drug use and trafficking are common both in Hong Kong and the US, and the consequences are very negative and long-lasting. The good news is juvenile crime rates has been steadily falling in Hong Kong, as you can see in this chart. The same phenomenon is happening in the US. Youth arrests and confinement have been dropping the last 15 years, and is expected to continue to decline. There's several main reasons for that reduction. The growing trends of promoting rehabilitation versus incarceration, and providing the adolescent with opportunity to perform community services. Delinquent teens are often provided wraparound services. That means social services, counseling, drug rehabilitation to assure that the educational, vocational, and individual needs are being met. All these policies are found to be effective in lowering the crime rate. Drug and other substance abuse is a serious problem in this world, especially during adolescence, when the adolescent's brain is still developing. The most common illegal drug used in Hong Kong is ketamine, an animal tranquilizer to put the teen in a stupor. For the US, marijuana is more popular. Marijuana is a psychoactive drug that provides users at a state of euphoria. There are many risk factors that predispose the teen for drug use. A teen may be biologically predisposed to addiction, and if the environment supports it, such as poor home environment, poor peer influence and pressure, frequent exposure to drug use, and the lack of academic success will propel the teen to first test out and then eventually get addicted to the drug. We're not going to discuss the drug issue in detail here because it was going to take more than a lecture, but we all understand that drug can wreck lives. Sexuality is often an important but not sufficiently discussed topic during adolescence. As the teen is developing and growing, the chance to engage in sexual activity also increases. Nowadays, teens are becoming more sexually active, and the rate of reported sexual transmitted disease is slowly climbing. And you can see both in Hong Kong as well as in the US. Now, despite this increase in sexual activity and STD, both countries find the teen birth rate to be declining. Both sexual education and birth control might have made a difference. Adolescent mental health is most vulnerable during this time. A number of challenges that a child or the adolescent experience or encounter will negatively affect his and her mental health. One prevalent symptom is depressive mood and the teen's inability to manage his or her emotion. As a child is growing up, he or she might be experiencing episodic or continuous trauma, such as domestic violence, bullying in school. Not having a healthy identity development also will affect a person to become self-doubt. Additionally, there's environmental barriers such as unstable living conditions, poverty, that add on to the vulnerability. If a teen suffers from diagnosed physical, mental developmental deficit, that will add on to the mental health. Suicide is always one of the biggest concerns for teens who are experiencing depressive mood and other negative emotion. The rates of teen suicide in Hong Kong fluctuates moderately over the year, about 3 over 100,000 people. And the leading mean for the youth in Hong Kong suicide is jumping. In the US, teen suicide is the third leading cause of death for youth between 15 and 19. About 15 per 100,000 people, 5 times as frequent as Hong Kong. And the primary mean is suicide is gunshot, since gun possession is common in Hong Kong. And the second is overdose. The recent study, this is interesting, by Kwong, a PolyU professor, found that youth in Hong Kong has a lower life satisfaction and perceived health than the counterpart in the US. School pressure, and a lack of academic success, in addition to inability to find personal meaning in life, often leads to drug use as some of the blame of the lack of life satisfaction in Hong Kong. Okay, now that we have discussed the development challenges, I want to talk about the final journey of adolescence, which is leading to adulthood. I will briefly discuss transition and highlight a few points. 18-year-old is typically the age signified adulthood. However, recent research indicates that the transition journey has been extended. The youth between 18 and 25 are considered what we call the emerging adult. And this term was coined by Jeffrey Arnett, a leading researcher in youth development and transition. The arrival of adulthood is often marked by finishing school, entering workforce, having one's home, marriage, parenthood. Basically, is financially and socially independent from the parents. So adulthood is socially constructed and not determined biologically by chronological age. So the emergent adult concept makes sense, especially for the current environment when there's a prolonged adolescent life course marked by compulsory education and the demand for higher education. And we are facing a very challenging financial environment that delays youth become independent financially. However, in the US, the youth who are racially minority and those with lower economic status have a more urgency to become independent adults. So let's recap the stages of adolescent transitioning to adulthood, who are known as emerging adult. At this age, the teenager is facing identity exploration, being in a vulnerable stage of instability, and often self-centered and focused. They're having the awkward and uncertain feeling of in between childhood and adulthood. But of course, we don't forget that. This is also a time of ample opportunities and possibilities. So, what are the roles we healthcare providers can play to support our youth transitioning to healthy adults? I want to emphasize 4 main points. First, it is important for us to have a good grasp of the adolescent development, knowing the strength and the challenge associated with being an adolescent. Second, we need to use genuine reflective listening. Be non-judgmental and open-minded to elicit and understand our adolescents' voices. 3, we will use an ecological approach to conduct our assessment of them. Understand that each teen's unique personal context and not to generalize the experience. One consideration is to accurately assess the nature of the problem behavior, whether it's addiction, gang affiliation, or school disengagement. We can ask this question: have this behavior been chronic since childhood or just emerging during adolescence? Is the pattern of behavior persistent or just episodic? Will this behavior transition out of adolescence or have long-lasting impact on that person? Are these factors biological? Exploring this question may affect how you respond to the problem. And fourth, we must collaborate with our youth and those who are close to them to identify and implement solutions. Make sure that whatever the intervention it is, it must be meaningful to the youth in order to assure they actively engage in those interventions. So ultimately, we want our adolescents to become a successful adults who understand their rights, have the ability to self-advocate, able to make wise, informed decisions, and have a sense of self-agency that they can contribute to the society. Thank you.